I'm gonna say a blessing, the bracha, the traditional bracha for starting something new, Shechianu. If you know it and you want to say it with me, then feel free to. And if you want to just say Amen at the end, that's great too. And my intention for saying this is gratitude for beginning something which I think I can say I feel is really important for me, and I see that all of you are here too, because I don't know what's going to come. I don't know what's going to happen. I very much look forward to discovering new things from inside of my unconscious, my soul, and hopefully helping everyone else have a similar experience too. So, Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech Haolam Shechianu K'imanu V'Higianu Lezman Hazeh. Thank you to the source of life for bringing us to this point and making this possible. And I'll just say like one or two words of framing before we go to the source sheet and start learning together, and then doing the work with those sources, which is as someone who has the privilege to live here in Israel. It's actually just coming up to 7 years. We moved in the middle of Hanukkah 7 years ago. Living here for 7 years, which I still feel like very new. I still feel. Somebody said to me, "You'll always be a new immigrant," and I very much feel that way. And I do feel very connected to the experience of people here, and the energy, the mentality of people here, as much as any one person can. And I can say it's a very paradoxical moment, because it is a moment of crisis, very, very deep crisis, very worrying crisis. And it's a moment which is also giving people an opportunity also to manifest their higher values, and in many ways bringing the best out of people, as challenge can sometimes. And I think that that's true in a way for Jewish people who feel connected to the Jewish people, wherever we are. I think these moments of crisis are an opportunity for us to learn new things, that we're not incidental things that we really need to go forward. So I really pray that that's like one of the ways this course kind of came to me, and I really pray that will be how it manifests, that it will be of service to you in navigating the new world that we're in, because I do feel we're in a new chapter of history. So without further ado, let's start doing the work. And actually, the first thing we're going to do before we even look at source sheets is we're going to meditate for 5 minutes, just to settle, to become more present, and so that all the work we do after that will be coming from a deeper place inside ourselves. So I'll give some gentle instruction, but if you have your own meditation practice already and you want to just do what you do regularly, that's absolutely fine. The instruction I'm going to suggest is for finding an anchor, finding a safe place where you can place your attention. So it could be a safe place in your body, like maybe your feet or your backside or your elbows, somewhere that doesn't give you too much pain. And let's bring our attention inside ourselves and choose an anchor. Let's see if we can bring an attitude of friendliness and welcoming to whatever we might find inside ourselves. Let's choose our anchor for this 5 minutes of meditation. Again, it could be a safe place in your body or whatever object you regularly use. And our goal is to try and keep our awareness as close to the anchor as possible, moment by moment. And inevitably, when our attention wanders, to gently but persistently bring it back with kindness. And just keep doing that over and over again. We'll sit in a few minutes now for silence, just trying to keep our attention with our anchor and keep coming back to it when we need to. And let's gradually bring this practice to a close. Come back together. Thanks everyone for your practice. So when we do that, we're cultivating something that in our tradition is sometimes called Yishuv Hadat, a settled consciousness, a deeper consciousness, a more stable consciousness, a more settled awareness. And please God, from that place, we'll be able to think and speak and create more skillfully in a way that will serve us and serve each other too. So I'm going to share my screen. We're going to start going through the sources. And I think I've cracked the, yeah, there you go. Cracked the whole screen sharing thing these days. Used to be a subject of some bother for me. I think it's okay now. So we're going to begin at the beginning of our story. The beginning of the Jewish story is also the beginning of the human story. As it says in Genesis, in the beginning of the Torah, in the book of Bereshit, and God created man in his image. In the image of God, he created him. Male and female, he created them. I know, because it's such an important text. It's so short and powerful. I'll read it in the Hebrew too, although I don't always. Vayivra Elohim et ha'adam, b'tzalmo, b'tzelem, Elohim bara oto, zachar u'nekeva bara otam. So the divine, according to our tradition, the divine had this idea that the divine should create this thing called humanity. And our mystics say the reason for this is because the Ein Sof, the infinite source of life, wanted somebody to have a relationship with, wanted somebody to be known by, wanted somebody to give love to. And the only way to do that was to have an independent being with free will who was outside of the divine, who was separate and independent. But as we know, the beginning of Genesis doesn't go so easily and so well. There's stuff that happens in the Garden of Eden that isn't ideal. We have the story of eating of the fruit. And then pretty soon after, in the second Torah portion, Noach, we have the story of the flood. God says, I have to destroy the world. And at the end of that portion, we have the Tower of Babel. And so after that, we begin the Jewish story specifically. And this is Genesis Rabbah. It's an ancient midrash. It's an ancient rabbinic commentary, one of the oldest ones we have. Was written down probably roughly between 300 and 500 CE. But the teachings may go back even before that. That's just when they were written down. And this is how this ancient rabbinic commentary explains the beginning of the Jewish people specifically. Because why did God need a Jewish people? That's the question it's coming to answer. Why not just go with people? So Rabbi Azariah opened with this verse from Jeremiah. And in the verse from Jeremiah, I should say, Jeremiah is a prophet, as you may know, and this verse is specifically one that God is speaking through the prophet. So the verse from Jeremiah says, this is God speaking, we tried to cure Babylon, but she was incurable. Let us leave her and go, each to his own land. So we tried to cure or fix Babylon, but it didn't work. She was incurable. Let us leave her and go each to her own his own land. So that's the verse. That's God speaking. And now here's the rabbinic commentary on it. We tried to cure Babylon in the generation of Enosh, but she was incurable in the generation of the flood. Let us leave her in the generation of the dispersion and go each to his own land. Yud Hey Vav Hey, God said to Abraham, go forth. So what's going on here? This is a classic kind of technique we see a lot in midrashic texts and other rabbinic texts. The verse is being broken up, and on each section of the verse, they're offering a little commentary, a little explanation of what's going on. And what Rabbi Azariah is saying is that God tried to have the divine plan be fulfilled with Babylon. And Babylon was, before the Tower of Babel, was a place where all the people of the world were united. They were all trying to build the tower together. It was every people were working together, but it didn't work. And then what followed was the flood, which was, a whole fresh start, because what was before was so bad, destruction and violence and so on. And then also the generation of the dispersion, the story of the Tower of Babel I mentioned, where the people, according to the Torah, that's the beginning of separate nations. Before that point, there's just one humanity. And the Tower of Babel is when the Torah says you get this nation, that nation going off. But it still didn't work. God's plan still wasn't happening. Well, remember what I said God's plan was at the beginning? God's plan is to have somebody to love and have a relationship with. People were not in a place of consciousness to be moving towards that. So God comes up with a new plan. And Rabbi Azariah says this relates to the end of the verse, and go each to his own land. God says to Abraham, go forth, lech lecha. And that's the beginning of the story of the Jewish people, lech lecha. So Abraham, at this point in his life, he's actually called Abraham. He's Avram. He doesn't have the extra hey, the extra syllable yet. He's going to get later. Abraham is the first Jew. That's how we understand the Jewish story. And he begins his life in the Torah with these verses here that I'm about to read from Genesis 12. And it's amazing quite how little we know about him at this point. All we know is that his family came from Ur Kasdim and they went towards the land of Canaan, but they didn't get there. And they stopped in a place called Haran. That's it. We don't know very much else at all about him, but we know that he was chosen for this mission. And I thought Tiferet just put in the chat the first Hebrew, and I appreciate that. We're going to talk about that, that label, that name, that he was the first Hebrew. Thank you, Tiferet. So Yud He Vav He, the divine source, says to Abraham, go forth. That's again lech lecha, go for yourself and go to yourself. Also, it means in the Hebrew, it means both. So go forth, lech lecha, from your native land and from your father's house to the land that I will show you. It's very interesting. God doesn't say go to the land of Canaan, go to the land of Israel, right? That is the land God's talking about, but God wants to make it a kind of quest. And God says, I will make of you a great nation, and I will bless you. I will make your name great, and you shall be a blessing. That's a really key line for us in this part of the session. We're really going to focus on that. And you shall be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you, and curse him that curses you, and all the families of the earth shall bless themselves by you. So this is the very, 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 very beginning of Jews. God says, according to our story about what it is anyway, God says to Abraham, go forth from all these places, I'll make of you a great nation, I'll bless you, I'll make your name great, you shall be a blessing. I'll bless those who bless you, curse him that curses you, and all the families of the earth shall bless themselves by you. That's our story. If you have questions or thoughts about this you want to share, please just make a note of them. Don't forget them. And I'm going to share a couple more sources, and then we'll come back together, we'll discuss, and then we'll have creative prompts to practice based on this. So another source, actually only one more source in this section, then we'll come back together. So this is another source, another verse from the Torah, from Genesis, from Bereshit, about Abraham. At this point, he's called Abraham. He's got the extra H in his name. And this is a really important verse for us because it's the only place in the whole Torah where we get any information at all about why God chose Abraham. It's such a fascinating question. I mentioned, we don't know much about him before. The Midrash, the commentaries, the early rabbis, they offer loads of different ideas why maybe he was chosen, but we actually don't know from the Torah itself. All we have is this verse. Let's see what it says. Now Hashem, God, had said, shall I hide from Abraham what I am about to do? And God's talking about the plan to destroy Sodom and Gomorrah at this point. So God is saying, shall I hide what I'm about to do? Destroy Sodom and Gomorrah? Since Abraham is to be a great and populous nation. Is to become a great and populous nation. And all the nations of the earth are to bless themselves by him. So God is saying, I can't hide my plan to destroy Sodom and Gomorrah from Abraham, because Abraham is to become this great and populous nation, and all the nations of the earth are to bless themselves by him. And then listen to this, very important. For I have singled him out that he may instruct his children and his posterity to keep the way of Hashem by implementing righteousness and justice, in order that Hashem, God, may bring about for Abraham what he has promised him. So just looking at the Hebrew for a second, it's so important. When God says I've singled Abraham out, the Hebrew is actually ki yadativ, which literally means I've known him in the biblical sense. I've become conscious of him, I've become aware of him, I have intimate knowledge of him. What's my knowledge? What is this intimate knowledge that God has of Abraham? that he will instruct his children and all his descendants after him to keep this way, this derech, this path, which is, and I want to highlight this word, tzedakah umishpat. Tzedakah is a word many of us may know. We use it often in the context of charity, meaning to give charity, but really it means justice. Tzedek is justice, and mishpat is another word for justice. So it's like both of these words for different kinds of justice used in different ways. But here we're told this is why Abraham's dedication to these values, that he's going to pass them on to his children and all his descendants. This is why we're told here that God has singled him out and that God cannot hide God's plan from him, and that Abraham is special, in other words. That's what we're being told. Let's come back together and just hear if anyone has any questions or insights, anything you want to share on those sources.
Could I just ask something very easy? It's just about that A in Abram.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's always said, you know, he hasn't got it here, but he's got it here, and it's a great thing. And but what does it mean? Like, what's behind it all?
So if I remember correctly, it's added at the point where he's given the covenant of circumcision, and he attains a new spiritual level in his relationship with God, and God says to him, now you're ready to fulfill your potential, to step fully into your role. So it's like a sign of his growth, that he's kind of like augmented his identity, that he's become somebody bigger than he was before. Thanks for the question. Let's hear from the folks. I see a few hands raised. So Richard and Michelle, please.
Richard this time. I like the word dynamic in the title for this course. And I was reading that as an adjective, so it's kind of passive and descriptive. But I think that it really is a noun. And it means to stimulate change, to do something about it. And I see both of those usages. I see in these passages both an adjective and a noun. So when I'm framing my attempted understanding of all of this, I have to take both of those into consideration. But at this point, I'm looking for something more dynamic, something that'll lead to action.
Thank you, Richard. Thank you. I really appreciate that. So our Jewish identities and our story is dynamic, and it's in a dynamic, or it is of a dynamic. I really like that. Thank you. Michelle, you want to add something?
Yeah, not add, but say something different. Daniel, good morning, by the way. I feel a lot of pride in the beginning of this, because not everybody, but in my family, there was such a sense of feeling good about yourself, and you know, it comes right from the Bible, you know, this sense. I don't know that all people feel that way, but my parents, who were not religious, but were raised with Orthodox, my grandparents were Orthodox, coming from the old country. And the message was, you have pride in yourself, you know, you can do anything, you can be anything. That's the message I got. And it's sort of been my underlying Judaism, you know, a confidence that I have from that messaging. And yet, so the fact that I don't want God to curse other people because they curse me. I want to have kavod and handle it myself. But let me just say that, you know, so we're still on the journey. And that's what that talks about, maybe the end of the journey of a holiness that we can have. I saw it in my mother, maybe not till the end of life. You know, do you get to that place? So it's very dynamic, as Richard said, because maybe the Torah is talking about how it will end up for you, that in the end, you will feel closer to God, and you will feel the holiness that your life might have been had you lived, you know, if you've lived it in a Jewish way.
I love that. An aspirational goal. Thank you.
Thanks.
Michelle, thank you. Let's hear from two more folks, Tiferet and Ariella, and then we'll move to practice. Tiferet, please.
Hi, thank you. I was trying to look up, and I'm not sure if I was successful. I was trying to look up when we read Genesis 12, 1-3, where it says we are to be a blessing, where we read that in relationship to October 7. And didn't we read it on Simchat Torah?
Right. Actually, on Simchat Torah itself, we start at the very, very, very beginning of the Torah with
Yeah.
Parshat Bereshit. So that literally will be chapter 1. And the Shabbat after that was Shabbat Bereshit, where we again read the portion Bereshit. But 2 weeks after that would have been Lech Lecha. It's the third Torah portion in the Torah. So would have been about exactly actually a month after the war started.
Okay, so that, yeah, Genesis 12 is actually Lech Lecha. Okay, thank you. That's helpful. Thank you.
You're welcome. And Ariella, please.
Yes. What I was left with, just like Jacob's name got changed after he wrestled with the angel. The whole Abraham's name changing reminded me that he was the first, but he was not the last one to have this wrestling with God or covenant or experience that caused a name change.
I love that. Yeah, actually, we're gonna, don't look ahead, don't ruin it for yourselves, because right now we're gonna be present with this, but that's coming up. We're gonna see the connection to that. So yeah, you're right on. So friends, it's time for our first set of prompts. As you know from the blurb about the course, this is a really important part of how we're going to spend our time together. I'm going to put these prompts in the chat and read them once out loud, just so everyone can hear them. And these, we're going to take 10 minutes, and you can silently reflect on these, write, draw, do whatever kind of expression or exploration works for you right now. And here are the prompts for the sources we just saw. What arises in you in this moment from learning these sources? What does it mean to you for the Jewish people to be described as we are in the above sources? What is your own relationship to this mission that's being talked about? What are your thoughts and feelings about this mission? And what is your role in relation to this mission? And just to clarify, I don't expect everybody to answer every question. It's like, just, find one of those that works for you to begin, and work with whatever works for you. If you want to work with all of them, that's great. But the idea is I phrase the same thing in a few different ways, so hopefully it will work for everybody. So it's there in the chat so you can read it easily. And as I said, we'll take 10 minutes now for writing, drawing, reflecting, whatever comes. So we'll meet back at 42 minutes past. So I'll see everyone in 10 minutes. my friends. So we're gonna come back together in the next minute or so. So see if you can bring whatever you're working on, whatever you're doing, to a place where it can rest, it can pause for the time being. Of course, you're welcome to come back to it. I hope people will come back to whatever gets started in this time. Now, usually I would definitely make time for sharing at this point. So because there are a few more people today, some folks are trying the first class as a trial. And because we spent some time doing an intro, we're a little bit short of time. Also, because it's the first class, there's like a little context I wanted to give. So I'm actually going to skip that stage right now, just to say when we continue the course, there's going to be a WhatsApp group also, which will be for folks to keep sharing on and keep that conversation going. So anyone who creates things or expresses things during these sessions who wants to share it with the community will have the chance to do so either during the sessions or in the WhatsApp group. For now, though, we're going to keep moving, and you'll see why. We're moving. It's a 3-part source sheet, and the 3 ideas really all kind of build off each other and need each other. And so if we don't make it to the end, we'll be lacking a crucial piece. So for now, we're going to keep moving. So stay with us. Share my screen again. So that was the end of the first section. Now, and actually this has been mentioned, that everything in this section has been alluded to already by the questions and comments that you all said, that Abraham, when he began his journey, see here, he's not yet Abraham, he's Abraham without the H again. He was called the Hebrew, Ha-Ivri. That's a verse in the Torah that he was called a Hebrew, and Ivri in Hebrew. You can see here the Hebrew word Ha-Ivri, Avram Ha-Ivri. That's what the Torah calls him in there in Genesis chapter 14, verse 13. And again, the ancient rabbinic commentary on this from the ancient Midrash is, Rabbi Yehuda taught the entire world was standing on one side, Ever, and he was on the other side, Ever. So what's going on here is the word for Hebrew actually can mean the side of a river, as in I'm on this side and you're on that side. And Rabbi Yehuda, interesting that that's his name, because we're named after somebody called Yehuda as Jews, and the place called Judea. That's really how we all came to be called Jews. So Rabbi Yehuda is saying that to be a Hebrew, at least for Abraham, the first Hebrew, means that in some way he was standing on one side of the river and everyone else in the entire world was standing on the other side. And what he's referring to is that we have this story that this person, Abraham, introduced ethical monotheism to the world. And by definition, he was doing something new. And we know from stories in the Midrash how the tradition talks about it. And we even see it a little bit in the Torah as well, that if you want to introduce something brand new that is not only a new theology, a new approach to God, but also is going to threaten power hierarchies, because he's talking about a God who creates everyone in the image of God, right? As opposed to, for example, Nimrod, who is like the local strongman, who in the Midrash, at least in the commentaries, Abraham is challenging, and Nimrod uses the power of idolatrous gods, of the fire god and other gods like that, to cement his political rule. He says, I'm the king of this place, and the fire god is on my side, and the fire god is going to help me be in charge. So anyone who wants to fight me has to also fight the power of the fire god. And Abraham comes along and says, there's no fire god, there's no water god. And and there's a midrash like this where Abraham makes fun of this and really annoys Nimrod in doing so. There's no fire god, there's no water god, there's no wind god. There's just one field of oneness that we're all part of. And you, Nimrod, are not any more important or holy or special than anyone else, right? There's universal justice, right? That is very, very threatening and destabilizing. And Abraham was not necessarily always welcome, right? It wasn't easy to be that person in that world. And this is put very well in this quote I found from Rabbi Judith Rosenberry. Some of you may know, she's based in the UK. She says like this: the role of the Jewish people and Jewish teachings in this world is being, it's kind of fancy language, but I'll say it again in plain language, the historical deconstructors of oppressive meta-narratives. I'll say it again, the historical deconstructors of oppressive meta-narrative. In other words, throughout history, we have been iconoclast. We have broken down oppressive meta-narratives. An oppressive meta-narrative is a story that says that this person is better than that person, right? So it's like in communism, like let's think about George Orwell's Animal Farm. All animals are equal, but some animals are more equal than others, right? That is an oppressive meta-narrative. The role of the Jewish people has always been to come along and say, no, right? I'm sorry, it doesn't work to say some of us are more equal, some of us are more this, some of us more that, right? That has always been our role. Now, in this part of the sortie and in this part of the session, we're focusing on the aspect of that's quite challenging. And it relates to, this is what Ariella mentioned earlier, and this is actually in Vayishlach, which is this week's Torah portion for those of us following the annual cycle. This is where Jacob fights an angel, the guardian angel of his twin brother Esau, and the angel says to Jacob this line, Genesis 32:29, the angel says, your name shall no longer be Jacob, but Israel. What does Israel mean? Why the name Israel? For you have struggled with God and men and have prevailed. And again, this deserves to be read in the Hebrew. Vayomer lo Yaakov yamer od shimcha ki im Yisrael. No more Yaakov for you, just Yisrael, though actually he's called both, so that's not totally accurate. He maintains both names after. Ki sarita im Elohim ve'ima anashim v'tuchal. Because you have struggled with gods, or God, with the divine, and with people, and you have overcome, you have prevailed. You have proven that you are capable of winning that struggle. And indeed, there have been many, many paradigms in Jewish history that Jews have helped to move that paradigm on. And I regard that as an example of struggling with God and with man and prevailing, because sometimes a paradigm can be like a God. Sometimes a paradigm seems so all-encompassing, a worldview can seem so all-encompassing that everyone just accepts it. And very often Jews have been in the role of pushing those paradigms on. And what another verse here from the Torah. Now, interestingly, this verse, and we have to acknowledge this and talk about this, this verse is said by Bilam, who is trying to curse the Jewish people. As it happens, Bilam is a non-Jewish prophet who is trying to curse the Jewish people, and God seemingly interferes and turns his curse into a blessing. But nonetheless, we're going to see this is a very complex verse that we can understand in very different ways. So Bilam says about the Jewish people in the book of Numbers, as I see them from the mountaintops, gaze on them from the heights, there is a people that dwells apart, not reckoned among the nations. Hen am levadad yishkon, uvagoyim lo yitchashav, a people that dwells apart and not reckoned among the nations. And you can already hear why it's interesting and challenging and verse, right? That why it can be read in different ways. Is this a good thing that we're a nation that dwell apart? That we are not reckoned among the nations? Is that who we want to be? It's certainly, many of you are in North America right now, which has been a unique point in Jewish history. In all of the Jewish story, there's never been a time and a place where Jews were so incredibly comfortable for so long in the place where they lived, and so safe and so well protected, and contributed so much, and so respected. Maybe Golden Age of Spain, you could say, is comparable. I think America's even more, though. And how does this land for us? In the world today, a people that dwells apart, not reckoned among the nations. Let's do a little bit more together, and then we'll come back together, discuss, share, and do more creating. So Rabbi Leo Beck, very great leader of progressive Judaism, based in Germany and then in the UK. He says it like this. He says, Jews possess a special genius for ethical monotheism, which keeps the idea alive even today. Were the Jews and Judaism to disappear, ethical monotheism would lose its irreplaceable advocate and might itself disappear. So I brought this quote here because he's saying there's something about Jewish existence which is necessary for this idea. And someone just asked on the chat, Ellie just asked, what's ethical monotheism? Who what isn't monotheism? So the ethical part is, it's not just that there's one God, but it's one God who actually cares and who actually gives us an idea of what justice is, and who tells us everyone's created in an image of God, and that gives us responsibilities for treating everyone in a certain way. So that's the ethical part of it. And Rabbi Leo Beck here is saying, it's not enough that we gave it to the world a long time ago and then now we can disappear. We are living advocates for this idea. We are living embodiment of this idea in the world. And finally, one more quote in the section from the late Rabbi Lord Jonathan Sachs. He said, and this is commenting on the line we saw about the people who dwell alone that Bilam said, which we said, was it a blessing or a curse? Let's see what he says about it. He says, to be different is not necessarily to be alone. Indeed, it is only by being what we uniquely are that we contribute to humankind, what we alone can give. Singular, distinctive, countercultural, yes. These are part of the Jewish condition, but alone, no. That is not a blessing, but a curse. I'll read that again. This is Jonathan Sachs commenting on that verse from Bilam, saying we're a people that dwell alone. He says, to be different is not necessarily to be alone. Indeed, it is only by being what we uniquely are that we contribute to humankind what we alone can give. Singular, distinctive, countercultural, yes. These are part of the Jewish condition, but alone, no. That is not a blessing, but a curse. So again, let's come back together. Let's hear if folks have got things you want to ask or say about these sources, and then we will have some time for creation, for practice again on these sources, and then we'll see how we're doing with time before the final section. Does anyone want to say or ask anything?
This is Hina. I do.
Hi, Hina.
Hi. Sorry. The other hands went up, but I was just getting unmuted. Anyway, I'm just curious about how Leo Beck survived Germany, if you happen to know that offhand.
I'm afraid I do not know that. Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah. Not a story I'm familiar with, sorry.
Not a problem.
Kathy, please.
Yes, thank you. This idea of ethical monotheism, it brings me back to, you mentioned of tzedek, justice, and makes me think of the word tzaddikim. And I think in terms of the Jewish identity, as humble as we strive to be, that this is part of our identity. And that, we can aspire to that kind of value. And, all my studies keep bringing that back to me. I think this idea of that we have a unique part to play, that we are all unique and all made in the image of God and yet unique. So part of it is this discovery of what is my unique role and figuring it out. I mean, maybe that's part of our why we're here and why we're put on the earth as Jews. But it's always evolving. We have to be so flexible and resilient. And it's always, you think of the people in Israel where you are and how much you wake up every day and you don't know what's coming. You don't know what's going to be asked of you or what you're going to have to be creative in terms of figuring it out. So thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for what you shared. I appreciate it. Yeah, and I think that's really like the spirit of this whole exploration, this whole course. We are here to allow some space for figuring it out. So yeah, I appreciate how you put it very much. Annie, please.
This is just a quickie, but it more or less explains my whole life. I mean, I didn't come to Judaism, most of you who know me know that, till I was in my mid-70s. But yet I was impelled to follow this course. I feel like Jacob waking up and saying, oh, I didn't know God was here in me. And I've lately identified it as coming through my family line in finding relatives I didn't know I had, and they're the same, always caring about justice and doing good for the world. And it's such an incredibly secure, amazing feeling to, I mean, yeah, it explains everything. Thank you. Or I could quit the course now. No. And it's like, yeah, now I know. I didn't realize being Jewish meant all that. And it's not a cognitive thing. It just came along with the package. And it's so old. It's beautiful. Thank you so much.
Happy Hanukkah. Thank you, Annie. Thank you very much. Let's hear from Teferet and Michelle and Richard, and then let's move to practice. Teferet, please.
Thank you, Rabbi Daniel. I'm so excited because there's so many really, really juicy, meaty things to get engaged with here already. And I do want to say for people who haven't been here before that, you know, we are in a safe environment where we really can ask difficult questions. So I'm going to throw out something difficult. So the notion of being particular, you know, and how this can it can be misunderstood and it can be used against us. And I would also say sometimes we use it against ourselves. And this and you know, what is ethical monotheism, right? So every time, you know, people say ethics, yeah, we have to be ethical, and everybody nods, yeah, we have to be ethical. But then when we look at, well, what is ethical behavior? What does that look like in this certain situation? Then we can run into discovering that we have different ideas. So I would put forward in the particular situation we're in now that and this I mean, I've been traveling with Rabbi Daniel really basically throughout COVID. So, you know, and just to see how things have evolved. Oh my goodness. But this notion of this thing of compassion, and you know, that we need to bring compassion into the situation, and that's another word where people will go, yeah, we have to have compassion. Of course we have to have compassion, but what is compassion? And compassion is the balance between unbounded hesed, which can be dangerous, and it requires the discernment of the boundaries. And we already talked about boundaries, and Abraham is, you know, he's Ivri, and that means boundary crosser. So, you know, boundaries are important. So we need boundaries around unbound hesed in order to arrive at the balance and the truth and the healing that is compassion. So, Marty.
Amen. Shemati. Thank you, Teferet. Yeah, and you know, maybe you knew this, but just say explicitly, that's Jacob's quality, according to the Kabbalists, that Jacob is the archetype of that compassion, that rachamim, that emet and Teferet. So yeah, you're very, very, very much resonate with that. And of course, what does it mean? Like, you know, I don't know, and I don't know if any of us has, you know, an answer, right? So that's what we're here to discover, to explore together. Let's hear from just a few more folks, and then let's move to practice. So yeah, Michelle, please.
You know, I'm so humbled by what you said, because it's true, Daniel. I grew up in America. You know, my dad fought in World War II. They were in New York, like a lot of people that came to this country. And right after the war, he went to Los Angeles, which was the land of milk and honey. I mean, it was a wonderful place to grow up. In my time, I'm 76 years old. And I will tell you, because he made sure, my father and mother, that we didn't experience too much anti-Semitism. You know, and they kind of laid low in all of it, kind of secular, but we always knew we were Jewish, like a lot of us, you know, our parents taught us. And then I moved from there to a very liberal Pacific Northwest place. But in the last few years, the anti-Semitic, that's what my father wanted to protect us from, was that anti-Semitism that other people in parts of the world have continued to feel for a long time. And I didn't, all these years, I didn't feel that, because I didn't look too Jewish and I could pass. And I just never felt discriminated in that area at all. And I will tell you that it popping itself up in a ferocious way that it has in the last few years, even up here in the Pacific Northwest, a little scary. for somebody who's so naive about it all in a way, and I just I want to come away from this because I feel good about being Jewish. I don't want to be afraid. At my synagogue, they put up a menorah in the courtyard, and people can see it. And a friend of mine said, "Why did they do this? Now they'll know where we are." Well, the heck with that. This is where we are. There aren't that many of us. There's only 220 families in my congregation in this little town. You know, I I can't let this atmosphere ruin my life at this point. And I got to believe, that some that something good will come from all of this. I just need to have that and hang on to that for you, Daniel, for myself, for the world, to hold that thought, because first is the thought, and then the action to be proud of it, not to run away from this. So thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. I heard a prayer there, so I'll mend to your prayer. And yeah, thank you for what you shared. It's beautiful. And Laura, please.
Yes, I just have trouble and almost upset to think that we are the only people in all the world that we can contribute to humankind in a righteous way. And it's just, maybe it's true, but I want to believe that we are not the only people. I wonder how other people feel about that.
Thank you. Thank you for the question. I mean, I want to say none of the text said that it was an exclusive claim, but you can certainly read it that way, right? You can certainly read it that way. So that's a great question. I'm going to say only because I want to make sure we have time for the creation and the new part, that if people want to respond to that question in your creation, in your writing, or whatever kind of expression you do, then please do. And then again, like, there'll be a WhatsApp group where we can share. And I think that's a very, very important question we will come back to throughout the course. Does saying that Jews have something special to contribute mean that nobody else does? Are we saying we're better than everyone else, right? I think that's a very important question, right? So thank you for putting it out there front and center. Thank you.
Thank you.
And Hannah, please.
Thank you. I'll be brief because I realize that we want to move on to the third section. But I've been inspired from the very beginning with we are all created, B'Tselem Elohim, that we're all created in the image of God. And that's not just the Jews, it's all people. And so it all flows from that. God saw the long picture when he picked Avraham, because he could see Avraham's teaching of the next generations. And that's where I see us coming in here. We are the descendants of Avraham. So therefore, I believe Hashem saw the quality in us that we will pass this on to our children and to the next generation. How? We are the people of the book, Talmud Torah. We're here to teach Torah. We're here to teach about the divinity within all human beings, not just us. And that's our special role. And I see us, the fact that we're all created in the image of God. I see rachamim, compassion flowing from that, because we are all from the same rachem, womb. We're all created from the womb of Hashem, and we all have that divine spark within us. So each and every of these phrases has led into the next one for me. And I just want to say thank you. And I'm really thrilled to be here studying with you all.
Thank you very much, Hannah. That was beautiful and powerful. Perfect. That good segue also into our round of creation. So again, we're going to take 10 minutes for it. And again, I'm going to put it in the chat and read it once out loud for everyone. So very similar to the prompts from last time, but just focus on these sources now, the ones we just saw about the struggle and the aloneness. What arises in you in this moment from learning these sources? What does it mean to you for the Jewish people to be described as we are in the above sources? What arises in you when you consider the aspect of struggle that has been and remains a part of the Jewish relationship with the other faiths and nations? And what is your role in relation to this struggle? So again, feel free just to use one of those questions or all of them if however it works for you. And we'll come back together at 15 past, quarter past. We'll come back together, and then we'll just have time for a little bit of a taste of the final section, which is great. We'll see you at quarter past. And again, we're gonna just try and find a way to bring what we're working on to a place where it can pause, or we can let it rest for a minute. Just catching up on the chat. Just really want to thank everybody who shared anything on the chat. There were some things I didn't get a chance to see before and didn't get a chance to respond to. Some very beautiful things there. So thank you. And the chat is sent out after with the recording. As long as I remember to do that, I try and remember to do that so everyone can benefit from what everyone wrote on the chat. Again, usually I would so love to have sharing time now, and I'm going to have to adjust my my plans for the rest of the future sessions in the course, because maybe I was just trying to squeeze way too much in, especially with the intro and everything. But if we do sharing now, we won't have time to bring it all together in the third section. So whatever you've created or expressed, I really hope, please God, there'll be a space and a time in the WhatsApp group going forward if you join the course, or some other space where we can benefit from what each other are creating, because that's very much part of the intention here. So for now, we're going to go to the third section. You'll see why it's very important we do this, to bring together everything we've looked at so far. So I'll share my screen again. I'm moving on now. The person who was most influenced most of the really complex sources, the high-level sources we're going to look at for the whole course, is this person here, Rabbi Abraham Isaac Kook. He was the first Ashkenazi chief rabbi of Israel, and as it says here, he's a giant of mysticism, also of Jewish legal authority of halakha, and he's a person actually who brought together many paradoxes. He came from a family that was both Hasidic and Litvak, which was opposed to Hasidic, and that was another kind of paradox that he bridged. And even today, there's a huge paradox surrounding him, a lot of controversy surrounding him, and he's understood in a lot of different ways, because to some Israelis, he's seen as the founding father, the patron saint, if you will, to use a phrase from another tradition, of the settler movement, the Jewish settler movement. But to other Israelis and to other Jews and to people around the world, he's seen as a big universalist. And the truth is that he's both. I'm not going to say, one group of people have a monopoly on understanding his teachings, but he's somebody who can be understood as being both a particularist and a universalist in a very, very, very deep way. And we're going to see together now how for him, those two things, which often are in tension, and I've heard from many of you and what you said tonight, and seen also on the chat and a few of the comments, that of course there are questions about the tension between those things, which we're struggling with in this very, very difficult moment, of course, of our people's challenges. And yet we're going to see how for him, he manages to find a very beautiful harmony between them. So that's what we're going to see now together. And you'll see why it was important we did this in the time remaining. Actually, I'm even going to skip, for the sake of time, these first few sources here, although maybe just the first line from this one is worth saying. He says here in Orot HaTeshuvah, the lights of Teshuvah, the lights of return, he says, just the first line, he says, the very pinnacle of the soul of the Jewish nation is the tendency for universalism. And this really sums him up in a nutshell. He says, actually, this was actually just said by one of you, who I think maybe it was Hannah, who said, the more we can be ourselves, we're actually here to teach the world that everyone is special, essentially, that everyone is divine. So this is how Rav Kook put it, that our soul, our collective soul, the Jewish soul, is about universalism, but we have to fully be it and fully embody it, to bring that to the world. And again, just skipping for the sake of time only to the first line of the next source, the soul of the Jewish people, he says here, is absolute justice. That's how he sees it. And again, that applies that's universal justice for absolutely everyone. So skipping down to our main source, this source we're going to read now, it was very, very important we get to it, because this really synthesizes so much of what we've seen together. It's a very famous teaching, probably his most famous teaching. I wanted to really start the course off with this being a guiding light for us. And as the course goes on, we're going to see a lot of other teachings from him in this vein, which I feel can be very useful for us in this process. So he says, this fourfold song, very famous, very beautiful poem. He says, there is one who sings the song of his own life, and in themselves he finds everything. his full spiritual satisfaction. And there is another who sings the song of her people. She leaves the circle of her own individual self because she finds it without sufficient breadth, without an idealistic basis. She aspires towards the heights, and she attaches herself with a gentle love to the whole community of Israel. Together with Israel, she sings her songs. She feels grieved over her afflictions and delights in her hopes. She contemplates noble and pure thoughts about her past and her future, and probes with love and wisdom of the heart her inner spiritual essence. There is another who reaches toward more distant realms, and he goes beyond the boundary of Israel to sing the song of humanity. His spirit extends to the wider vistas of the majesty of humankind and their noble essence. He aspires toward humanity's general goal and looks forward toward their higher perfection. From this source of life, he draws the subjects of his meditation and study, his aspiration and his visions. Then there is one who rises toward wider horizons until she links herself with all existence, with all God's creatures, with all worlds, and she sings her song with all of them. It is of one such as this that tradition has said that whoever sings a portion of song each day is assured of having a share in the world to come. And then there is one who rises with all these songs in one ensemble, and they all join their voices. Together, they sing their songs with beauty. Each one lends vitality and life to the other. They are sounds of joy and gladness, sounds of jubilation and celebration, sounds of ecstasy and holiness. The song of the self, the song of the people, the song of humanity, the song of the world, all merge in this person at all times, in every hour. And this perfect wholeness rises to become the song of dedication, the song of God, the song of Israel, in its full strength and beauty, in its full authenticity and greatness. And he finishes, he says, the name Israel stands for Shir El. The letters of the name Israel in Hebrew can be rearranged to say Shir El. Shir El means the song of God. It is a simple song, a twofold song, a threefold song, and a fourfold song. It is the Song of Songs of Solomon, Shlomo, the king, King Shlomo, which means peace or wholeness. Shalom is in the name Shlomo, Solomon. It is the song of the king in whom is peace and wholeness. Oh, I'm just going to recap. I can't read the whole thing again, but I will recap it. It says there's somebody who sings the song of their own life. Then there's somebody, and they find everything they need in that. Then there's somebody who sings the song of their people because they find just singing their own song isn't enough. So they sing a song of their people. And that is where they find their spiritual fulfillment. And there's another who reaches beyond that to sing the song of all of humanity, and they aspire to the perfection of all humanity, and that gives them inspiration. And then there's somebody who links themselves with all of God's creatures and sings the song of all of creation. And that person, as it says, is one who sings a song every day and is assured of having a share in the world to come. And then there is someone who sings all those songs in one ensemble. The song of the self, the song of the people, the song of humanity, the song of the world, all merge in this person at all times, in every hour. And this is a song of wholeness, of peace, of shalom, of shleimut. So this is Rav Kook's vision for us. And you'll see why I wanted to make sure we got to it and why I offer it, because I think it's such an important voice. You don't have to agree with it, you don't have to like it, you don't have to buy it. And he's saying something which I feel is so missing in today's world, which is, these values of particularism and universalism don't only have to fight. And actually, the way that he finds a way to have them be in harmony is through that word harmony. It's poetry and music. It's expression of the soul. He doesn't make a logical argument. He doesn't say 2 + 2 is 4. So in that vein, let's use the time we have to create, to express. And again, I have prompts I'm going to share. And we may not have, we won't have all the time here, but this is what we're here for, and I want to prioritize it so at least folks can get started while we're together, even if you don't finish. So here are the prompts. Prompts for creation or reflection. What arises in you in this moment from learning these sources? What does it mean to you for the relationship between the Jewish people and other humans to be described as it is in the above sources? How do you view your own role in the unfolding story of this relationship between Jews and other people? If you were to create your own synthesis of the aspects of Jewish identity we have explored in this session, what would it be? So again, just one of those questions is fine to work with for now, whichever one speaks to you most. And we just have 5 minutes to then we'll come back together. So even if you just make a start, then I hope that's worth it. So let's come back together at 29 past. We're going to come back together in a minute. So find a way to, again, just bring what you're working on to a place it can pause, at least for now, just while we say goodbye to each other. So I want to really, really thank everyone I'm going to commit to making the source sheets shorter. That's my work. That's always my work. That's like my New Year's resolution every year. They get shorter and shorter. So that's my commitment for the going forward. And as I said, more time for sharing, because clearly it's a big opportunity we have to learn from each other. So whatever you created in this session, please hold on to it. And if you join the course, then, which I hope some of you will, then there'll be a WhatsApp group. As I said, we can share those things in. But even in future sessions too, there'll be time for sharing. And really thank you to everyone just for your presence, for your practice, for your creativity, for everyone who did share in any form at all, but just by being here, that's very, very appreciated. And I'll send out the recording, the chat, and everything you need to know going forward. So have a really good rest of your week. Shabbat Shalom. When it comes, may it be a peaceful Shabbat, please God, for everyone.
Thank you. An amazing class, Rabbi.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
You
you.
never
you very much.
disappoint.
No,
Thank
just what
you.
the doctor ordered.
Yes, medicine for the soul.
Absolutely.
Mm.
Sacred medicine.